Good morning. I am Dr. Nsenga K. Burton, and I'd like to welcome you to NMPA and Black Press USA's Tune In Live. Today we have with us the illustrious 14th president of Virginia State University, Dr. Makola Abdullah, and we will be talking about his wonderful institution. But in addition to that, how the COVID pandemic, has impacted his institution. So without further ado, let's get into it. Welcome, Dr. Abdullah.
Thank you. Good to see you, Dr. Burton. Excited to be here.
Good to see you too. Thank you. Thank you. I'm glad you're here too. So let's just get into it. Tell me some of the wonderful things that are happening at Virginia State University, which is in Petersburg, Virginia.
That is correct. It's outside of Petersburg, Virginia, in Ettrick.
In
the village of Ettrick in Chesterfield County. But we are definitely of Petersburg. I'm excited to be here, excited to represent Virginia State University. We love our Trojans. I tell you, it is interesting. And you asked me to kind of go backwards and talk about some of the great things that are happening. I really appreciate that question because nowadays we don't get a chance to really talk about the things that are happening at our institution. But we are a wonderful institution, about 4,500 students that choose to study here at Virginia State University in all kinds of majors. We are accredited in business. Reginald F. Lewis, the first Black billionaire, is a graduate of Virginia State University. We're accredited in business and education and engineering and any other fields. Our computer engineering program has consistently been amongst the top universities in the country in graduating Black computer engineers. So we have strong academic programs, strong study abroad programs, a wonderful sports program. Our basketball team is consistently ranked near the top of the CIAA. And so I'm just totally proud of my faculty, staff, and students for how they have, and our alums for what they bring to the VSU family and the VSU community.
That's awesome. So one of the things I want you to talk about is, because you've been on a number of lists to top 20 HBCU, U.S. News and World Report, Essence Magazine, like even our publications have been honoring you and the work that you've been doing.
HBCU of the Year from HBCU Digest. I want to shout them out.
I was about to say it, but thank you. All right, HBCU Digest. Sorry. Yes, it's okay. It's okay. And you are yourself a civil engineer. I wanted to say that as well. But can you talk to us a little bit about how COVID, the pandemic, because you have all these wonderful things happening, all these great things going on. You have students who are doing amazing things, faculty who are doing incredible research. How, what happened when the shutdown came through, like when it was determined that it was no longer safe for students, faculty, staff to be on college campuses? What happened? How did that impact Virginia State?
I tell you, it was so amazing. And I think that, everyone in university and not in universities really understands that it was so unprecedented. And so, I remember I was actually in my hometown of Chicago on March 7th. It was a celebration of life for my mother for her birthday. She passed in October. And I remember a couple of days before that, it could have been that Friday or Thursday when the announcement kind of came out that some of the schools in California and in Washington State and then Ohio State had shut down their campuses to go to total remote instruction. And I think at that point, that we knew that it was something that was coming. I'm not sure we thought it would reach everyone as fast as it did. But once we started to really understand the risks of COVID, the risk to our students, and more importantly, the risk to our faculty and staff who were really in that strong risk category, it meant that we had to really move to take action. And so we started meeting on the 9th, that Monday, through that week. And through that week, we gradually made the decisions, one, to telework on any particular day. I would imagine that 90 to 95% of faculty and staff at Virginia State are not on campus. I'm on campus today, but I'm actually rarely on campus. Our students, we made a move to have the students leave the residence halls and to go home, or at least to go to a loving place that they needed to be. We were very adamant about that because we knew that if we kept them on campus, that one, we might have to provide a level of health services that we might not be able to if COVID got really strong, but also that we were putting our faculty and staff and students, our faculty and staff in harm's way if they were here. And again, our faculty and staff, particularly our residence life staff, our security staff, are really the ones in harm's way. And so to kind of protect, we did that. We had no cases on campus. We had no cases that came from activity on campus. We were lucky to get everybody away. And then shout out to the faculty and to the students for being patient and for working through this remote instruction. You, of course, as as a university faculty member, you understand how difficult that can be for people to totally change their mode of instruction. Our faculty senate, our staff senate, our students, our SGA were around the table helping us make the right decisions for Virginia State University. And that's one of the things I'm most proud of. If there's a silver lining, it's that Virginia State University shared governance works, and it really worked in this case.
Excellent. So what did you all do for students who may have been affected in different ways? For example, maybe they don't have Wi-Fi at home, maybe they weren't able to get back home, some of your international student populations. How did you address those folks when you were closing down the campus?
So there were some, we have an affiliation agreement with a university-related apartment building that's close by. And so for those students who really couldn't find a place to go, we helped assist them to move into that facility. For many students who had challenges, some of them for us at our institution, we had just come back from spring break.
Right.
And so it was a lot to ask people to pay and to leave. Hey, Tara Patterson, I'm excited to have your daughter come to Virginia State. I'm sorry. I got excited by that comment. I do so love the students, and we miss everybody. Hail State. I'm sorry. Let me focus. We did provide incentives for some to be able to leave, including purchasing plane tickets, help one gentleman fix his car. And so we did everything that we could to help facilitate people go to places that they love, because early on in the crisis, it wasn't clear whether we were going to be locked down as a nation for a long period of time. And though I knew that the students wanted to stay on campus because they love Virginia State, and so do we love them, that I didn't want it to create a situation where they may have challenges at home and then not be able to get home, right?
Yeah.
And so that was particularly important for us. So with the digital divide is real. We worked with some of the counties in Virginia to help some of the libraries provide additional access to Wi-Fi. We did send out some hotspots, but honestly, not enough. That is something that we are really looking into moving into the fall in terms of how do we provide quality devices, help to provide quality internet access, because this COVID pandemic has highlighted the inequities in our education system and our healthcare system, and that we have so many smart, intelligent young people who are committed to their work who did not have the ability to do the work. And so that is certainly a challenge, and we're working harder to meet that challenge.
Yes, that's definitely a challenge, especially when you have students. And I think people who aren't professors or who don't work in academia, they think we can just do things with broad strokes. But, when you have students who have parents who have COVID, and they're trying to be at home and they're self-isolating and they're also caring for their parents, there are lots of those kinds of issues that do come about that actually universities have to deal with or help deal with too, if that's a registered student at your university in good standing. So kudos to you for doing that. That's amazing.
Dr. Burton, you did see that Matt just came across.
Matt.
just want to say.
Hi, Matt. We went to Northwestern together, just in case anybody is wondering about some of these comments. And you Wildcats in the house, yes.
That's Black right. Protozoa for life.
Protozoa
for life.
Yes.
That's right. Black cats.
Yes. So, my other question around how COVID impacted the campus is obviously a financial one, right? Because sure. HBCUs are seriously underfunded. And we hear a lot of that about that in the mainstream media. But it's a real situation. It's dire in some cases. Lincoln University. I mean, these are very esteemed universities too. Lincoln University just announced that they declared financial exigency. I can barely pronounce that word, but there we are. They have Morehouse College. They're having furloughs, and the president has graciously agreed to take a 25% pay cut so that they can save the money that they need to keep operating. And people, I don't think, understand how universities work in terms of funding. There's restricted funds, there's unrestricted funds. So some of the things I've seen people say is like, oh, Oprah just gave them all this money. And I'm like, well, if it's restricted for students, they can't use it for operations. So can you talk a little bit about that and how COVID has impacted it with you having to refund money and send students home? Like, what does that mean for the bottom line, and what does that mean for the future?
When we sent the students home, we did provide prorated refunds for room and board. Mm-hmm. It was significant, and the students did deserve to have that. They weren't on campus, so they deserved that refund. But in the overall business and operations of Virginia State, we still, of course, have debt service on the dorms. We have individuals who are who are receiving their livelihood from servicing those dorms. And so there were additional costs that we had to make sure that we ate. We also were able to get funds through the CARES Act, which many higher education institutions got, and half of that money went directly to students. We have our checks going out this week, actually, over $3.4 million was the cut for the students to help provide in that time frame. But to give you an idea of kind of the bigger picture, at Virginia State, and again, I'm going to ballpark it just so people can kind of get an idea. We'll say, just for a topic of conversation, that our budget is in about $160 million. And that's close, but again, ballpark. About a quarter of that, about $40 million of that is restricted. It comes in for research grants or some things to do very particular things. So it's not really money that can be played with, if you will. Then there's about $40 million that we get from the state as a part of a state appropriation. And then the rest of the funds really come in through tuition and fees from students. And so the idea as we roll into the fall of people being unsure about campuses, of us being unsure a little about whether we're going to open up face-to-face totally. And we want to provide the best quality of education, but we want to do it in the right way that makes sure that students, faculty, and staff are safe. But when you look at that, half of our money really comes from tuition and fees and engaging students. You can see how this, and that's true for many institutions, you can really see how critical it is in terms of finances for us to really address the pandemic appropriately and quickly and correctly so that we can all get back to the regular kind of business that we have to do. So it is going to be tough, but I'll tell you this, there aren't another group of institutions that are more resilient and are more prepared for these kinds of issues in our HBCUs. Because in reality, we've been dealing with these kinds of crisis modes or these kinds of challenges for our entire existence. And so all of my colleagues, we talk on a regular basis. They are ready and prepared to do the things that need to be done to make sure that our institutions are safe. I saw a question in the chat. I want to make sure I answered it. And it was from a parent from an incoming freshman saying, "Can you give us more information?" So let me say this: upcoming year, there it is from Dion Hackett Abdullah. Just wanted to tell her that we are planning for everything. We are following the guidance from the Commonwealth of Virginia. There is an overall state higher education and education. How you doing, Cynthia? Education working group. I am on that working group to look at how we open up K through 12 and higher education. We will be using that guidance along with our plans to open in the fall to make sure that we do everything correctly. But the challenge is, of course, is that even though we want to, because we know that the HBCU experience is best face-to-face, that we will have to follow all public health guidelines, and we want to make sure that everyone is safe. And so we will not do it if we can't make sure that as best we can, that people are safe. And so I would say to everyone who's a parent of a student to continue to follow us on social media, follow me on social media, to check your emails, that we will be over communicating to make sure that you know where we are in the process. But we look forward to having everybody back on campus when outside opens back up again.
Right. That is so Black. I love that. Outside opens back up again. Oh,
that's my when the kids first started saying it, I thought that was the coolest thing ever. When outside opens back. I'll tell you this, Dr. Burton, and then I know you've got a question. I think that when this is over, right, when COVID is no longer an issue, when people aren't afraid to leave their houses, homecoming at our HBCUs it's going to be the biggest and best homecoming. That semester, when all of this is over, is going to be the best semester all of our institutions have ever had, because young people, and to be honest, some of us old people, are now really understanding the value of face-to-face education, the value of the family education that HBCUs provide, because now it's been taken away from us.
Right.
And so I'm excited about when it's you're welcome, man. I'm excited about when we're able to open up and able to really provide the full Virginia State University experience, because we are really excited to give it to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so going forward, like, do you already have projections on how many incoming freshmen are coming? Do you have students who have said that they are no longer coming, or are they trying to defer? Like, what is it looking like on the student side in terms of the fall semester? Like, even if you say you're going to be open, we're going to be open and ready for business, how many students do you anticipate will actually be really willing to come, and whose parents are going to be like, okay, we want you to come, even though African Americans are a high risk category, particularly with this pandemic?
Well, our numbers right now for our incoming class look not unlike the numbers that we see normally, that we saw last year, saw the year before. But we're trying to, there's so much uncertainty. We're trying to factor in two things. One, that our community, our African-American community, has been adversely impacted by the economic aspect of the crisis so far. So even if there was a vaccine and full testing tomorrow, so many of the people who have been laid off, who have lost their jobs, are some of the same people who are supporting our young people through college. And so we know that that's going to have an impact. And that's one of the reasons why we've reached out to the federal government to say, look, as you look to provide resources for students through the Pell Grant for them to continue their education, that we want to look to increase that. We want to look to the feds to increase that so that students can really navigate through this very challenging time. And then, as you said, we're also adversely impacted by the health-related aspects of the crisis. And so more of our students have family members who have been impacted. More of them may be in families where people say, you know what, little girl, you might not leave this semester until we know that it's safe. And so we have to factor in those unknowns. So the numbers look good now, but we also know that it's just, it's a challenge. If in this current situation, if I was a parent with a child in college, I'm not, my kids have graduated from college. Thank you very much. But if I was, it would be a very serious conversation. So we understand and respect that this is a difficult decision for all families.
Okay. And let's say people do choose and the universities are open in Virginia and what have you. Is there a coordinated effort to respond to what maybe waves of the pandemic? Because that's how it's kind of being discussed around here at Emory University, where I am a professor in film and media studies. But the way that we've been talking about it or thinking about it, or one of the ways is waves of this pandemic, because we don't really know what it is. And, Emory is a leading research university. We've got Morehouse School of Medicine here in Atlanta. CDC is here. So there's lots of discussion just in general that happens outside of media spaces. And so some of the things that are being talked about are the pandemic, if it go, how it's going to come in waves and go in waves, and what that looks like if you have an incoming class, maybe due to weather or whatever, there's a decrease, right? And then we hit the winter months and then it returns, or something like it returns, or it looks like that. Do you have a plan already in place on how to address that? And can you all service the students who may get sick, or the faculty and staff, even you who may get sick?
Right. Well, I think we're working on that plan now, coordinated with the power of the group. And so the Council of Presidents in Virginia, we meet regularly once a week, led by our chair from UVA-Wise, Chancellor Donna Henry, who is leading us in an incredible way. There's also, as I mentioned, a statewide working group of all educators, K through 12 and higher education. That includes the Virginia Department of Health. So everybody's coordinated to make sure that that we can begin to answer those questions. The easy answer is that there's been a lot of thought and input into that already. And I'm a part of those conversations. I wouldn't want to say those conversations are done, but I also don't want to say that they haven't started. And that we are very serious about making sure that education in Virginia is safe, and education at Virginia State is safe. This is big. Every single president I know takes it personally when you start thinking about the campus, right? We own a level of responsibility, and the idea that we wouldn't make it as safe as possible. I know that's something that all of us really, struggle and tug with. And so we're going to do the best we can to make it a positive environment. And I think I saw Sydney. If I saw the name, I thought I saw her also on Twitter, and I think that's a volleyball student from New Jersey. If I'm correct, please let me know if hashtag Sydney Patterson coming to Virginia State plays volleyball. If so, I've seen her picture.
Okay, so how are the government agencies working with you? Because you mentioned the CARES Act. I know there was another $1 billion that was given specifically to HBCUs. What else can HBCUs expect from government agencies or from the Department of Education or what have you?
Well, first, I want to thank all of our representatives in Virginia, Bobby Scott, Donald McKeechin, Tim Kaine, Mark Warner, and I know I'm leaving people out, and so I apologize. You can't leave, you're not supposed to leave your congressional figures out, but I know that there's so many people who worked hard from the Virginia side to make sure that the CARES Act was passed. We really appreciated the funds that came to higher education, particularly to Virginia State, and that those monies that were part of the MSI money. I want to thank TMCF and Harry Williams and UNCF and Michael Lomax and Nafio and Leslie Baskerville for all of their work advocating for institutions that in many ways serve the least of us. And so that has been good. Someone asked me on one thing was, is it enough? I'll tell you, it's never enough. There is this country, philanthropy, federal government, state government, local government, us as individuals in terms of how we give, we have to remember to invest in those institutions that are continually investing in making our communities more accessible, in providing diversity, whether that diversity is based on race, ethnicity, or income. And so we are constantly advocating to make sure that those institutions that are doing that work, and those include the HBCUs, are protected during this pandemic. What I would hate to have happen, and I can see it if there's not enough investment from all of the parties, is that much of the access that has been granted to many students in higher education across all universities, the increase in African-American students, the increase in Latino students, the increase in low-income students, that all of that in this crisis will be wiped away, right? And you'll have a generation of young people who will be victims, if you will, of this pandemic years after the pandemic is over. And so we must protect the idea that our higher education institutions were built to provide a pathway for young people to the American dream. So we're committed to that at Virginia State, and we're committed to saying that message. And so we continue to advocate with all of our partners at the federal level and at the state level to let them know how important our young people are.
Okay. So I neglected to tell people that this is the first, and there's a question. Are there any efforts in process for other HBCU presidents to discuss health and safety precautions for student, staff, and administration?
Well, that's, thank you very much, Anita, as I try to look through your name there. Yes.
Anita Rochelle.
That all of HBCUs are thinking about this right now. There is not one president in higher education, particularly HBCUs, that isn't incredibly concerned about how they provide a quality education to their campus. Some of us have had the opportunity to be on a show like this, to be able to share. Some have not yet. I'm sure that they will. But if you're at all concerned about what's happening at your HBCU, please reach out to the president or to others. You can find most of them on social media. If not, you can send some emails. But I guarantee you that there is we have a university-wide committee, including faculty, staff, and students, that is working very hard to plan for any of the scenarios that might happen in the fall. All institutions have it. They're all moving in that direction. And so I'm very proud of my colleagues, and I get so much from them, so much support and so much information, so much guidance. I want you to know that they're doing the work. They're all doing the work.
So what do you say to, and this is what I was going to say before Anita's question. This is actually this first, it's an inaugural series that we are having where we're going to be talking to HBCU presidents, and we're going to try to get as many in as we can about a plethora of issues, many different types of issues. So right now we're focusing on COVID. And so we're going to be talking to other HBCU presidents going forward. So we'll be able to ask that question to Anita every time that we have someone on here.
That's right.
So you are the first in this series, Dr. Abdullah. But one of the things I wanted to ask is, how do you, what do parents need to be thinking about, or what can the parents be doing to help their students, particularly incoming freshmen, get ready for whatever happens, whether it's in person, whether it's remote teaching? Like, what can they be doing now in order to make that, transition, which is always, interesting, right? You're going from a child to an adult, allegedly, but what can parents be doing with their students, or with their children rather, and our students, to make this a better and easier process?
Okay, so I'll give you the pre-COVID advice, which is still relevant, and then I'll give the post-COVID advice. So for parents on the pre-COVID advice, and this is the advice that I give my parents when they come for orientation, is to stay in close contact with your young person, right? With your child. Because the college experience can be an overwhelming one. The idea of leaving home and developing this close network of friends, it's a lot. And I think one of the more difficult challenges, and whether it's a boyfriend or a roommate or a girlfriend or just a regular best friend, one of the things that happens early is that the people who you might meet, sometimes those circles fall out. And that happens right around October. I can tell you when it happens. It happens right around October. And around that time, for some, it will move them away from their work, right? They can become inside of themselves. And so it's important that you stay in constant contact with your child, know who their friends are, talk to them about it. And when they end up in a difficult, challenging situation with a relationship, that you're there to support them so they can make it through that work. If they could make it through that October from a failed relationship, again, it could be a roommate, a boyfriend, a girlfriend. If they can make it through then, they'll be fine. So that's my pre-COVID advice. My post-COVID advice. And this is real. So I'm just going to keep it real. We're going to do everything we can. Every university is going to do everything they can to minimize the impacts of COVID-19 as we're moving forward. But none of us have a crystal ball. None of us have a crystal ball. And so there is, we will all have to understand that if outside opens back up, that there's a level of risk that we'll all accept in terms of doing that. And you have to seriously think about that, as I would have to think about it, as a parent. So
yeah. Let me ask another question. So nationally, 65% of students, it takes 65% of students 6 years to graduate. That's in general, right? And then those numbers fluctuate depending on. So how is that impacting? So students who may have had to go home and weren't able to, or didn't have access to the technology, or just, the mental stress. This is mental health awareness week. I don't want to show you my book. There's my book cover behind you. That I wrote.
See.
Okay. But May is mental health awareness month. And COVID impacts people in different ways. So we focus a lot on the financial, right? We focus a lot on the hygiene, right? The medical, that piece of it. But the mental health piece of it, we don't really talk about. And I just want to know what is in place for students who might be struggling, maybe with the loss of a parent. People have lost a lot of grandparents. It's a season of loss for some of us. And how does that impact, or will it impact, completion rates or graduation rates or what have you?
I think, and again, let me start to take pre-COVID first. My pre-COVID answer would have been that the graduation statistics are greatly skewed by income of families. I mean, it's really just that simple. And if we had a longer discussion on it, what I would ultimately end up telling you is that there are no set of institutions that do a better job graduating students than historically Black colleges and universities. And I've got a bunch of slides and presentations and a research article that I've written, and other of my presidential colleagues have done the same. And so I would say that we do an incredible job getting students in and out, particularly students who may have a bit of financial fragility, which is something that other schools don't do nearly as well as us. And that's documented. And so I can stand on that soapbox and scream all I want. But I'll give you the post-COVID. This is definitely a very challenging time. The idea that we're asking our students to do work from home and they may be concerned about their own health or someone else's, even if you haven't been directly impacted by it, the idea that there's a pandemic outside of your door and you should stay at home and wear a mask is debilitating. And so I think it's going to have a huge impact on higher education moving forward. We will have to change the level of mental health support that we have here, whether we're face-to-face or online, just to provide a level of support to people in what is, and even to faculty and staff. I mean, we're asking faculty and staff to do more in this very challenging time, and they themselves are worried about their economic and their health, right? Economic situation and their health. So it is a lot. And so what I tell everybody is, one, this is going to be a marathon, not a sprint. Take days off. Second, be around the people that you love, drink some water, take some walks, but do the things to protect yourself, because we're going to need everybody for the long term. Yeah,
absolutely. Absolutely. Now, when I think about the digital divide, and the big debate over the digital divide for many years. And I'm the former executive director of the National Association of Multicultural Digital Entrepreneurs. And we lobbied for years to get internet access to become categorized as a utility, so that more people can have access to it. And then, of course, you can control the pricing and things of that nature. And that, of course, we were real close, and then we didn't. So are you all in touch with the FCC chairman about this digital divide? And I think it's not just HBCUs, it's so many colleges and universities across the country. The difficulty that it has presented for our population, for sure, but for other populations, rural populations, schools that are in rural places that might be Division I institutions, but they're still in a rural location and they have issues with access. Have you all talked to them about maybe changing the categorization now that we've had this pandemic, in the face of this pandemic, and what that looks like?
Yes, and definitely. And I'll tell you this, I think the bigger issue is not the universities. I mean, we do have certainly our challenges, but what the digital divide has shown in K through 12 has been just incredible. Where you have students that don't have access and can't come. I mean, again, you're talking about intelligent young people who are committed to their education, and suddenly they can't do their homework because they don't have access. And so if we're providing a quality public education for all students, then students have to be able to have access to their work in class, in school, and not in school. And so we see some of that too, of course. But I think it's an even bigger challenge at the K through 12 level, and I know that those who are fighting for equity at the K through 12, that's one of the most important things: is how do we make sure we get technology and internet access to all? Everyone who has the ability and wants to make a difference should do it.
So I have a question. One of the things that we have in our community, which is good, is that we only kind of pay attention to donations when it's attached to a celebrity. So we hear about Morehouse, Robert White and Oprah Winfrey, the young entrepreneur, owner of Slutty Vegan, who cleared the debts at Clark Atlanta University. Of course, and I'm having a brain fart, but Spelman College. I live in Atlanta, so they're top of mind. But what can non-billionaires, non-millionaires, regular old people like me and you do to support our institutions financially? I think people are of the mind that they have to give large sums of money to make a difference. But, can you give us an idea of how people can help our HBCUs stay afloat during this particularly precarious time?
Look, I'll tell you this, everybody, and if I could reach through the screen and reach in people's wallets, I certainly would. But everyone should give to an HBCU, whether you went to an HBCU or not. If you believe that your kids and your children's children deserve the opportunity to have the choice to choose an HBCU, then it's imperative upon you that you help to make sure that our HBCUs are around now and for years to come. There would not be a Black middle class in the United States without our HBCUs. And one of my great mentors says this all the time. He said, if HBCUs didn't exist, we would be fighting to create them. And so everyone needs to give. And it's not about how much. Here's the funny thing. It's really not. Every little bit counts. For me, it's really more of the gesture. It's the idea that there are young people at Virginia State, at Morehouse, at Spelman, at Dillard, at Howard, at Benedict, at many of our HBCUs who want to follow in the same footsteps that many of you have followed. They want to be the next generation of journalists and presidents and doctors and lawyers. And the only thing sometimes holding them back in a particular semester are a few dollars. I say to everyone, you should give to your dream, what you want it to be, what you have become. Give so someone else can be that. And every little bit counts. Me and my wife and I gave to 20 HBCUs last year. Many of my presidential colleagues have done the same. We're committed to giving to each other because we know that all of our institutions are important in the long run. I want to say, some people ask me sometimes, why is it important that Black students attend HBCUs?
That was my next question.
Okay, I said a little bit. I think the choice to go to college is an intensely personal one, right? I know, of course, that you went to Northwestern as an undergraduate student. You turned out Fantastic. That was a great choice.
Well, I'm from Richmond, Virginia, which is a HBCU in and of itself. So I went to a black middle school and high school. So don't shoot me, people.
Virginia State, but I'm not going to hold that against you. I'm not going to hold that against you. But what I really mean, though, is that is a family decision that's important to make as a family for different. So I understand that for many, PWI, predominantly white institution, may be the best choice for them. So I don't think that everyone should go, but I do think that everyone should have the opportunity to make that choice, right?
I agree with that. I agree with that.
HBCU on their list. The incredible thing about your story is not that you chose, it's not that you chose Northwestern. It's that you chose Northwestern. You had HBCU choices that were on your list that you could have attended. And what we want to make sure is there's not a world where that doesn't exist, right? Where you have to go to Northwestern University because there's not another choice. And so I believe that as a part of a college tour, make sure your young person takes a look at it. Make sure there's one on the list, just one. And they have to go visit and they have to look. And if it's not the one for them, then, we understand. But I think that every young person and not so young person should consider an HBCU, should travel to visit, should learn about it. And again, if it's not the best for them, it's not the best, but it should be on everybody's list.
Yeah, absolutely. I absolutely agree with that. I mean, there's 5,000 colleges and universities. There is one for you, and it could very well be an HBCU, but you should absolutely, especially if you're an African-American, have HBCUs on your list. One more thing I wanted to talk to you about before, and if anybody has questions, you need to send them now because we're wrapping. But one more thing I want to talk to you about is, I know you can't diss our Secretary of Education because politically you need to keep money coming in. But can you please explain for people who may or may not know what an HBCU is and why they came about? Can you talk about that history and why that it is so important that we actually support our HBCUs financially and otherwise?
Understood. For our historically Black colleges and universities, all of those words are important. I think sometimes the word that's left off is the H, which is historically. And so soon after the Civil War in the country, there were many institutions established, some private, some public, to educate the sons and daughters of former enslaved Africans here in America. Us here at Virginia State were founded in 1882. We were the first public historically Black college here in the Commonwealth of Virginia. There's a second one. We call that university Little State. For any of the Norfolk State people who are listening, we call Norfolk State Little State. But no, just joking, really. I love Norfolk State, and President Dr. Javon Adams-Gasson is doing an incredible job. But also our private HBCUs in Virginia, Virginia Union, Virginia University of Lynchburg, and of course Hampton University, led by the great William Harvey. Lord have mercy, that was close. And so our institutions were established to make sure at a time when African Americans did not have access to other institutions, that they had access to higher education. We were established in 1882 as the first institution in Virginia to grant collegiate degrees to African Americans, and the first institution to grant collegiate degrees in a co-ed classroom to men and women. We have led the way for access in this country. And our HBCUs have done that for many, many years. And without our institutions, the number of Black professionals would not be what it is today, and it would sharply decrease. And so it's important, again, whether you attend or not, you should adopt an HBCU. And I would recommend that if you're going to adopt one, that you adopt the great Virginia State.
Shameless plug. Dr. Harvey is an institution himself.
He is.
Yeah, he is. So I think that we had a fantastic conversation. Thank you for being our inaugural guest for our series on HBCUs. HBCUs are so important to our community. They graduate the largest number of African-American students in many disciplines. They set a lot of students up for success at the graduate level, postgraduate level, PhDs, things of that nature. And so I think, and particularly in a precarious time as this COVID pandemic has placed us in, it's important to remember our institutions that have really invested in us. And so we should absolutely invest in them. So I would also encourage people to contact your local HBCUs and find out what they need. Okay. If they are in need of additional funding, if they are in need of masks for the fall, whatever it is, but find out what it is and see how you can be helpful in some way, shape, or form. Thank you for coming. Do you have any last comments?
I do. One of them is this. Of course, many people may not know that we spent some time in college together. I was in graduate school at Northwestern while you were an undergrad. And so we, in some ways, grew up together. Thank you, Bobby. I see that. And I'm about to ask exactly what you just said. Is I think that anyone who went to Northwestern with us, if you know both of us, and you're watching this because you know both of us, I expect to see your check at Virginia State University, and I will be checking.
Yeah.
I'm not even kidding. For everyone else, whether it's Virginia State University or not, I think it's important in this time that if you have the means to do so, that you do what is appropriate for you and your family and donate to an HBCU. And then last but certainly not least, I want to shout out my wife, who is doing a great job, stuck at home with me. And so I love her to death. And I just wanted to say hi to my wife and my kids. How y'all doing?
All right. Well, thank you so much. Thank you for your great leadership and your wonderful comments. Bobby Jackson just shouted us out.
All right. So he said, email me. I'll call him myself. I'll say, look,
I'm sending any.
If you want me to reach out to your child to tell them about the great things that are happening at Virginia State, just put it in the comments. I'll do it. And you can follow me on social media. I answer my own DMs at Makola Abdullah on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.
All right. And what I'll do also in the follow-up article to this, I'll put the link to donations in there too for people who want to donate, because I've seen that a couple of times come up in the comment section. And just one quick question. I know I was wrapping up. I'm sorry, but just one I forgot. I need to talk to you about. Some people, one of the reasons that they are concerned about sending their kids to HBCUs is because of what they perceive to be a revolving door in terms of leadership. Can you address that? Like, what do you say to folks who are looking at mainstream news and all of the news that they see, or most of the news that they see on HBCUs is not very positive? It's about the financial issues. It's about the changes in leadership. It's about alleged corruption, things of that nature. What do you say to those folks?
Well, first I would say this. I think I'm sure they wouldn't be surprised to know that we don't always get treated in the media the same as other institutions. And so one, you should treat all of the information with a grain of salt. While there have been challenges in HBCU history with leadership turnovers at different institutions, I'll tell you right now is one of the most stable periods in HBCU leadership. And there are a lot of fantastic, vibrant, exciting, visionary leaders who have chosen to work in this space when they can work in any other space. Here at Virginia State University, I want to thank the Board of Visitors who have been fantastic. My bosses, I've been at Virginia State now for 4.5 years. Last October, I have an extension through 2024. And so there are many institutions that take the idea of stability and leadership very seriously and understand that while we may not all be able to be Bill Harvey, who has been, I think, president for 40 years, that the work that he has done and the way he has transformed Hampton University as president is something that we all really aspire to be able to do with a sense of longevity. And so I look forward to a wonderful, to working with a wonderful cadre of presidents for many years to come.
Excellent. And my mother, Beverly Burton, just said that she's sending VSU. VSU will get donation from your mom, Nsenga.
Hey, Mama.
Thank
you very much. I'm gonna pick that one up myself.
Yeah, we're gonna send those Burton checks down there. Don't worry. And I'm sending my nephew there. So thank you again, Makola. I appreciate you. And I mean, Dr. Abdullah, I appreciate you. And again, look for the follow-up article. I'll have your Twitter handle, everything in there. So for people who want to get in touch with him directly, and for those people who want to support VSU in many different ways. Thank you for coming. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
All right. And thank you for watching NMPA and Black Press USA. Tune in next week where we will hopefully be talking to another fantastic HBCU president, as well as having a discussion about mental health and Black people and mental health awareness during the month of May. So have a great weekend. Take care of yourself, stay clean, and stay home.